Hey guys, Torcus here. So in this video we're going to be talking about Kindred, the new Shadow Isles champion coming in the Empires of the Ascended expansion for Legends of Runeterra. We're only a couple days out now, and I'm mowing through the rest of the card reviews. I'm assuming we're getting Azir tomorrow, which is the day before the expansion. So that'll be the last thing that we'll be looking at. I'm going to try and catch up on everything before that happens. Anyways, so let's just dive in and check it out. So Kindred is a 5-mana, 4/4 quick attack unit, and she reads, the first time you slay a unit each round, I mark the weakest enemy, and round end, kill units with my mark. This is a really interesting new take on removal, because you basically... You can't target exactly, but you can try your best to set up everything beforehand. If you do use your first slay of the round to kill a smaller unit, let's say you Vile Feast onto a 1/1 or whatnot, then at least it picks the next biggest one or the next smallest one, and it's a really cool idea. And her level up is, I've seen you slay 2 units with my mark. The level up is just a +1/+1 buff, but every first time you slay now gives a +2/+2 as well. So it's this ramping up threat where, already your opponent probably wants to take out the Kindred because she is a huge problem for them constantly taking out their units. There is some counterplay for sure where, if you're swinging in for an attack, they can make sure that their weakest guy that is going to be marked is just going to die as a chump blocker anyway, so it's not a big deal on that front. But both players can kind of back and forth, kind of push either end and try to make everything work out on that front. You can also glimpse your marked unit or whatnot. It will slow down the Kindred from leveling, and they're not getting much out of the Kindred mark aside from maybe pressuring your opponent into doing something they don't really want to do, which is still valuable for sure. But once she is online on the level up, then you are just ramping her up every time. A large quick attack unit can easily force a lot of awkward chump blocks out of your opponent. And over the course of the game, if she sticks around, you'll eventually be able to start getting some pretty decent damage on the Nexus. At the very least, it's absorbing a blocker that your opponent might otherwise want to keep on their board or use to block something else or whatnot. So I think Kindred's going to be very, very strong. I think she's going to be a very high skill champion to use, because lining up your slays on the right targets and timing everything properly and making sure your opponent can't take away the value you get from hitting those marks and stuff is going to be a lot of things to consider as the Kindred player. But that's what makes Kindred so exciting for me. So I'm really hyped to play this character. And I think Kindred will definitely be very viable. Certainly with Nasus in a Slay archetype with Shadow Isle Shurima. But I can imagine you putting her into a lot of different control decks with Shadow Isles and whatnot. And potentially even some Slay-oriented aggressive decks, because she is still kind of an aggressive body at the same time. And the marking might not work as well if you're expecting your opponent to be blocking a lot and maybe using that marked unit as a blocker. But if you line it up right, it might just make some sense. Especially if you're on your defense turns and you're taking out your opponents. That way, it's pretty sweet. So then we have Kindred's Spirit Journey. That's her champ spell. So it's a 5-mana fast speed, kill a unit, then revive it. This is really, really cool because it's our first means of protection for your own units in Shadow Isles. We've been missing that for a while. They don't really have anything like this. And it is very flavorful as, you know, it kills your own unit. Every other region has very different ways of protection, but this is very typical of Shadow Isles to just be murdering everything. It does have some cool synergies with Kindred, where you can kill a smaller enemy with it, and then it'll mark something larger, and then it brings it back again. It also, you can use it to stop attacks. Even if they don't keep it, it does go back to the bench, so it is a way of blocking an attack, at least temporarily. And yeah, but I think the best part about it is definitely the ability to keep your units alive by sacking them and bringing them back. It's got some cool synergy with Anivia, and we've seen Anivia around. We already have Gluttony, but this is much more likely to work than Gluttony. It's just that, and Gluttony, like, you know, pulls the Rekindler and all that. Gluttony's probably not going to miss most of the time if you're running 3 Rekindlers, but this might be a little better sometimes. Especially in the case of if you get silenced by Hush, this still works. In a way, you don't get an extra Anivia, but you do get to keep the one you already have. Versus if you try to Gluttony an Anivia and then they Hush, then you lose both the Gluttony, which does nothing, and you lose the Anivia. So that's definitely a thing too. And like it also gives you your summon effects again. It gives you last breath triggers, all this kind of stuff. I think in slower decks, definitely if you have a deck that's very dependent on a certain champion, perhaps, then this will make a lot of sense. Maybe not in the Nasus Kindred deck, because you already have Hourglass, which is cheaper for sure and will do the same protection idea, even though this does have more flexibility, because you can use it in a way of dealing with your enemy units as well. But it'll be great when you do use it as a champ spell. And in different decks, I can definitely see this being a thing. Like, if you were to put it into a Vi deck, like Vi Control, then that would probably be pretty good. She does, you know, get reset back to being normal sized again, but you can just ramp it back up still, and it would still be pretty sweet. And you can use it on your Ledros and stuff, and get extra Ledroses, so you have one on board and you have one in hand to threaten 2 things at the same time. So yeah, so I like it a lot. It just might be a little bit behind the equal options in certain regions like Shurima, but in other decks, definitely it'll find a place, I think. Then we have Fading Icon. 2 mana 3/1. When I'm summoned, summon a Prey. Prey is a 0/1. It's obviously very easy to compare this to House Spider, because that is a 2/1 that summons a 1/1. Or a 2/2 that summons a 1/1, should I say. And this definitely has a worse stat line, but it is in a different region, so it does give you the option of having the same idea. Though the fact that this Prey can't properly block anything and trade out with it is certainly significant. One of the big things about House Spider is you can trade off with a 2 health thing and a 1 health thing with the same blocker, or with the same card, and that's really nice. This is more of a slay fodder, sacrifice fodder, where you kill off your own unit with something. So you use that on the Prey. I don't think that's a big enough reason to do it. I think we have enough cards that fill that niche already. I may be wrong, but I think in the past we've had plenty of decks that do have that idea where they do sacrifice your own units and get value off of it. And this isn't exactly upping the power of those decks. So I think since we already have better options, I think this one wouldn't make it into those decks. And probably won't make it into any decks if that's not the case. Because, you know, that's the only place it really makes any sense to be in. Outside of that, yeah, I can't imagine it seeing any play. So it's probably going to be just a card that falls into obscurity. Then we have the Ether Fiend, a 7-mana, 6/4 fearsome, and play effect, kill an ally to kill an enemy. So this play effect is basically Crumble, though it doesn't hit landmarks, which, I mean, is probably relevant in this coming meta. We're going to have so many landmarks. We are more than doubling the amount of landmarks of the game, I believe, with this coming set. Mostly from Shurima, but Shurima, I'm sure, is going to have a huge meta impact, given the power level of the cards we've seen so far. But yeah, so you're getting a fearsome body alongside your Crumble. Crumble is super cancelable, but it has seen play in the past in TF Go Hard, just because the deck building cost of having to make sure you have to pull the Go Hard meant that you didn't have access to cheaper spells generally, so Crumble did make more sense as a way to stay in the game. It also uses spell mana, which is significant, but in a Undying deck, which I think is going to be what these Slay decks are going to have in most cases, the Crumble and this will both be very good to use on the Undying. Even if you do fizzle the effect, it's still a pretty decent body. You know, like, your opponent will have to use some amount of removal to deal with the effect, so you're still getting some value on that front, and you're getting left with a 6/4 fearsome. 6/4 fearsome's like 5 mana, so you're really, the 2 mana is the play effect, basically, right? So for that reason, I see some potential there, but I do think that the flexibility of using Crumble with your spell mana and the fact that it can hit landmarks probably makes Crumble make more sense in the situations we're going to be having in the near future. Not to mention 7 mana might be a little slow. You might have not enough space in your deck for an expensive card like this that might end up not really proving to get much value out of its play effect if things don't line up properly. I can certainly see it finding play, though. It could be a thing. Probably not more than a 1-of in most cases. But a 1-of I could certainly see happening in a deck like that. Just because in the later point of the game, being able to take something out and still have a body like this would be pretty nice. It would still die to like 4 attack units, though, and that is a little disappointing. Like, the attack is only gonna really matter in a place where you're getting those decrease on attacks to get the fearsome going off. And if we are building this whole fearsome archetype, which some cards have been going towards, this isn't gonna fit in there, I don't think. I don't think that's there's already a bunch of stuff vying for this later mana point, and they're already better than this for sure for what the deck is going to be doing. So yeah, it's got a little potential, but not too much. Then we have Mask Mother, 2 mana, 2/2 fearsome, and play effect, kill an ally to grant me its stats and keywords. This seems so powerful. It doesn't take bad keywords. We've had that confirmed. All cards that are granted keywords from things are never negative keywords. So if you use this on an ephemeral for instance, a Dark Water Scourge, which is one of the biggest synergies I can think of, then you are getting a 5 mana 7/7 fearsome lifesteal, which is pretty freaking insane. And there's just I feel like even in the regular case, you can get a lot out of this if you hit an Undying with this. Doesn't really matter how big it is. Even at base, if it's a 2/2, this is still a 2 mana 4/4 fearsome, which is wonderful. Not to mention, it's still bringing the Undying back and making it bigger, which is already something you want to do. And this triggers Slay in Slay type decks. So I think this is going to be a very top tier card. I think this is going to be in most Slay type archetypes. I could even see this pushing very different sorts of decks where you can just really make an impact with this play effect. And it also has really good synergy with Song of the Isles too, where you could just shove lifesteal onto something and then munch it. Like, you could throw that onto your Undying and then still eat it with this. So giving this lifesteal doesn't even seem very hard at all. So yeah, I think this is going to be absolutely amazing. It's an immediate play effect. It is not a skill or anything like that, so it's not cancelable or whatnot. Absolutely awesome. Then we have Spirit Leech, 4 mana 4/1 with the play effect kill an ally to draw 2. So this is definitely a very good play effect. It is effectively Glimpse, but it happens immediately. Obviously, Glimpse has some synergy with its speed, being able to actually cancel things and take value away for your opponent by making sure that their stuff fizzles and such like that. But having it happen immediately is also definitely good in other ways, because if you want to use Glimpse proactively, it's certainly a lot worse. In this case, it can't be cancelled. But the body definitely isn't great. It's hopefully just blocking one thing, and that's only in the case where your opponent can't deal 1 damage. Which, some decks can't, but overall, I think if you need to draw, you'll run it in these, like, Slay type decks, but I really don't think you will need to draw. I think with 3 Glimpses, and, probably if you're doing the Shurima deck, the card that tutors your champions, you're probably not going to really need this. But if you do need more draw, you'll certainly look at this card. Outside of that, you're not getting so much out of this that you're really excited about this. Like, you're not running this over Glimpse, that's for sure. And yeah, it'll just be, if you need the draw, you'll run it. If you don't need the draw, you won't run it, because Glimpse is still definitely better in most cases. Alright, then we have Lamb's Respite, 2 mana slow speed spell. Give the weakest ally I can't take damage or die this round. This is a really, really cool card. It's got a lot of different uses, I think. It might not be super obvious immediately. You could use this with kegs, so that you can keep using your keg over and over, which is, in matchups where you don't necessarily expect your opponent to be able to stop it, because this is super cancelable. If you go in for a slow speed spell like this, your opponent could just take out your kegs before it happens. But in a situation where you're not playing against anyone with damage-based removal, or hopefully not Hush either, but I guess if they hushed a keg and you did this, you wouldn't feel too bad, because you still have the kegs after the turn ended. But yeah, you could use this with kegs, and it gives you a lot of big damage. It's definitely easier to pull off than unyielding kegs in a lot of cases, which I've tried before and actually had pretty decent success with. You could use this with Fiora so that you can just use a bunch of single combats after you play this, and then she's not going to be taking any damage, so there's really no danger there, and you can just potentially finish off her whole thing then. Though I don't really know if you can pull off running Fiora in Shadow Isles. That might be pretty difficult. But one of the coolest ideas is you can run this with Out of the Way, and then it does become a 2-mana slow speed Unyielding Spirit, which is pretty nuts. You can do that quite early on. If you play Out of the Way on turn 3, then you can play this on turn 4 on like a Darkwater Scourge, like we were talking about with the Masked Mother. And then you have a Immortal 5/5 lifesteal. Another amazing way to make that old card actually be really, really relevant. So there's certainly ways to use this. I think an out-of-the-way type deck would be pretty cool to do. It does have the targeting of the weakest allies, so you're probably going to have to run it in a deck that doesn't run too many units in it, just so that you make sure that it hits the right thing. But yeah, I think in a deck that really tries to make use of it in a cool way, you could make some pretty sick combos. Hush is always going to screw it over, but, you know, Hush is just busted. That's just how it works when it comes to Hush. But I'm definitely going to be trying some cool combos with this. I'm excited about it. Then we have Unto Dusk, 2-mana burst speed spell. Draw 1, and then activate an ally's Nightfall effect, ignoring any targeted portions for its Nightfall. So this is a double Nightfall trigger for Diana, which is kind of nice. Probably not super relevant. Normally, Diana, by the time you're trying to do all of that stuff, or by the time you want to be playing this, she's probably already leveled or close to it. But it is like a double attack buff as well, if you really need that. But honestly, Diana's not going in for lethal a lot of the time either. Unless maybe you're combining her with Atrocity. What it does do really well is, if you use this on Aphelios, this is effectively a better version of his champ spell if you've Nightfalled it, because you do draw 1, and then you get the effect that his champ spell would already be doing. And you could also use this to get some extra triggers off of some of your offensive Nightfall cards. Like, you get an extra +2 attack on your Crescent Guardian. You get an extra lifesteal or a drain proc off of your Doom Beast. All that kind of stuff. Cycling 1 card and dealing damage to your opponent's face for 2 is actually really, really good. Like, I was even talking about the Ruinous Path in Shurima, and I was saying that has some decent potential there. But if you're using this for the same idea, then this is like way, way better. So I really like it. Like, you could even trigger Nocturne's Nightfall off of this, and then any of your fearsome guys are more likely to be able to go through on the attack, or even use it during combat as a combat trick, and then all of your allies will suddenly potentially live through blocks, which, you know, is super, super sweet. So I don't know if Nightfall's finally going to be a super viable archetype. I mean, it's kind of been fringe for a long time. I don't think this is going to blow it out of the water, but I think this will probably have a lot of success in combination with Aphelios. And we know that Aphelios is already very viable. As long as you do end up pairing Aphelios with Shadow Owls, which, you know, might be more questionable than anything else about it. But certainly in Nightfall archetypes, that's been a thing already. That's kind of how you build Nightfall. But yeah, if Nightfall ends up finally getting over the hump with this, that would be pretty cool to see. And then the last card we have here is Song of the Isles. It is a 2-mana burst spell that grants an ally lifesteal, fearsome, and ephemeral. So this definitely screams Undying because it gives you lifesteal, it gives you fearsome. The fearsome might matter in some cases, and that can be pretty sweet on a Undying that's grown quite a few times. With the amount of support we're getting for Undying, you are probably going to be able to get it grown to a decent degree a lot of the time. And you don't care that it's ephemeral. In fact, you probably want it to be ephemeral because you kind of want it to die. So that's pretty nice. And I already mentioned the amazing Masked Mother synergy with this, because you do end up getting to permanently grant the Masked Mother the lifesteal without having to get the downside of the ephemeral part. Even if the fearsome isn't actually going to do anything, just because you already have the fearsome on the Masked Mother. But the lifesteal, obviously, already really, really strong. So, more Undying support, really cool to see. We're going to have... I can't imagine Undying not being viable at this point with the amount of stuff we've seen from Shurima and from Shadow Isles that will help that deck, and the champions that are going to be viable in that deck, because we haven't had any champions that made sense in Undying before. It's generally been a championless deck, and a deck that didn't have access to something this good as a survivability tool, because getting that extra lifesteal can certainly keep you in the game for a lot longer that way. So yeah, so that's going to be it for this video. Please leave a like if you enjoyed it. Comment down below what you think of the new Shadow Isles cards, as well as Kindred, the new champion that we're going to be getting. And if you'd like to see more of my content in the future, please subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one.